Assalamu alaikum. Can everyone hear me? Welcome. Alhamdulillah for those who are joining us on Zoom and for those also joining us on YouTube. Alhamdulillah. Okay, wonderful. Inshallah, we'll get started right away. We'll start with our dua, inshallah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. نوينا التعلم والتعليم والتذكر والتذكير والنفع والانتفاع والإفادة والاستفادة والحث على التمسك بكتاب الله وسنة رسوله والدعاء إلى الهدى والدلالة على الخير وابتغاء وجه الله ومرضاته وقربه وثوابه سبحانه وتعالى وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. In the name of God, the most compassionate, the most merciful, all praise is due to God, Lord of the worlds, and peace and blessings be upon our Master Muhammad and his family and followers and companions. We intend to learn and to teach, to remind and be reminded, to benefit and be benefited, to improve and be improved, to encourage holding fast to the book of God and the way of his messenger, to call to guidance and to direct towards good, hoping for the countenance of God and his pleasure, his proximity, and his reward. And peace and blessings of Allah be upon our Master Muhammad, his noble family, sincere followers, and companions. Ameen. So it's a pleasure and it's an honor to be with all of you ladies tonight. Thank you so much for joining on this Thursday night. I'm honored that you would make time to come for this gathering. This gathering is special to my heart. I think it's going to be one that I enjoy personally the most and possibly will be, I hope and plan to, God willing, benefit from it the most. I shouldn't say the most, but a lot. And sorry, I'm just, yes, my notes, just grabbing my notes real quick. One of the things that is the purpose of this halaqah, and it is a halaqah, it's a study circle. It will not just be a lecture, inshallah. A study circle is something where we are all studying something together. And we know the beautiful narration of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ وَإِنَّمَا لِكُلِّ امْرِئٍ مَّا نَوَى. That verily every action is by its intention, and all of us will get what we have intended. We will attain that which we have intended. And so we start with a dua that has intentions in it, to study and to learn and to benefit. And then this particular study circle has intentions. One of the major intentions behind this ladies' study circle is that we live in a time, especially now during COVID-19, where we're more busy probably in our homes, with our families, with our kids, than we've ever been. For those who are living amongst their families, and for those who are, maybe they don't have children or they're not married, even if they're not married and they're still living with family, it's created a very particular kind of environment for us. And there are a lot of ways to benefit from tribulation. There's a lot of ways to benefit from being in a sort of in a situation that's a little bit more confined. One of them actually is to grow in our learning. So one of the ideal situations that we have when your days are somewhat more monotonous or structured because you have to stay home. I shouldn't say structured because a lot of people are not having a whole lot of structure right now, but they're having to stay home. And so when you stay home, you can intend to chart out time for yourself in a way that doesn't get interrupted the way it used to get interrupted. And one of the hopes is that this brings rejuvenation and energy and a place of growth for all of us, so that, some people during COVID-19 actually have chosen in their context to use this time to actually memorize the whole Quran, which is, I think, an incredible, amazing thing. In the past, subhanAllah, even when scholars were unjustly imprisoned and they'd find themselves imprisoned, what they would do is, because they're scholars amongst each other, is they would start actually learning from one another and getting their ijazat in different subjects. Like maybe they weren't even advanced in one subject or another, or maybe they were just a beginning student and they were unjustly imprisoned, but they found themselves with scholars confined. And so they use that time of confinement to grow in knowledge. And the purpose of this is not for us to become scholars. The purpose of this is actually just to go back to the basics, because that's something that's very rejuvenating in and of itself. SubhanAllah, a lot of teachers will say this. They'll say, I can teach the beginning texts for the rest of my life because they actually are the most enjoyable, the fundamentals. I can teach al-ajrumiyya, for example, in Arabic. I had a teacher who said this. Similarly, this particular class, or I shouldn't even call it a class, a study circle, is we're gonna go through some books. I'm gonna tell you the titles of the books. It would be ideal if everyone could order these books online. There's literally just two. When we finish them, then if we want to go on to something else, we can decide then if that's what we want to do. And the idea is to not give anyone more than one small page of reading a day. And this comes to the second point is, subhanAllah, there was a period of time in my life, obviously when I was living overseas, with my husband, we were studying, and you could spend your entire day thinking and studying and going through complex issues in fiqh, or this matter or that matter, and then afterwards coming back to America and getting involved in community life, which is mostly service oriented, and becoming a mother, which is also mostly service oriented, and not having missing the 15 hours a day or whatever it was, especially during exams. But so I asked a teacher, like, I feel like I'm losing it all. What should I do? Like all that stuff that we studied and we memorized these definitions, we went through these things. And what the teacher, subhanAllah, said is, don't abandon learning altogether, but just do a little bit. That, again, narration from the Prophet Muhammad SAW, that the small deed that is consistent is more beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this idea of, I want to learn and grow in a small but very consistent way. And there is nothing more, I should say, important to start with for anyone on a journey of learning than to start with the fard ain of our religion, which is what am I individually responsible for in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I say this because a lot of times when people want to start, and especially this week, I made this mistake myself when I was in Egypt, is we get excited about doing really complicated things. We want to run before we can walk. And one thing that was actually unique in our studies is we were going to Al-Azhar, but then also going to AUC at the same time and doing the Islamic Studies program there. And they'd start us off with a very simple introductory book in Al-Azhar, and then you go to AUC and they're looking at highly advanced texts, and there's a part of your nafs that feels like, wow, I'm reading this or that. And it was before our time, like that exposure to the highly advanced text. We needed to learn to just walk a little bit before we could touch some of these heavily advanced subjects and authors. And subhanAllah, that's, after all of this time, one of the things that I'm reflecting on now, this is many years later after we've come back from Egypt, is how important are the basics? How beautiful are the basics? How essential are the basics? How renewing are they? When you know the fundamentals, you have a solid foundation to stand on, and they help guide you in, again, at the very basic level. And this is what there is knowledge that we are not responsible for. Allah will not ask us about certain kinds of knowledge on the Day of Judgment, but there is knowledge that we are responsible for, and that is the knowledge of the fard, that which is an obligation for us as individuals. When we stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and He asks us about our deen, what will He be asking us about? And there's we know very well Hadith Jibreel, beautiful narration of um, a very significant, I want to say, event in the life of the Prophet Muhammad SAW. And as an explanation, when I say fard ayn, do I mean just do's and don'ts? Do I mean the fiqh of washing um, and how to pray? What is the fard ayn for a believer? For us on the Day of Judgment. When it comes to our deen is comprehensive. Our deen is not one, facet of our life, but it is comprehensive. And so we take guidance on understanding the different subjects of our deen actually from the life of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. And this is the significance of Hadith Jibril. And I will narrate, or I'll read it in English. Umar ibn al-Khattab reported, "We were sitting with the Messenger of Allah, peace and blessings be upon him, one day, when a man appeared with very white clothes and very black hair. There were no signs of travel on him, and we did not recognize him. He sat down in front of the Prophet and rested his knees by his knees, and placed his hands on his thighs. The man said, 'O Muhammad, tell me about Islam.' The Prophet ﷺ said, 'Islam is to testify there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is the messenger of Allah, to establish prayer, to give charity, to fast the month of Ramadan, and to perform pilgrimage to the house, if a way is possible.' The man said, 'You have spoken truthfully.'" So I want to pause here. Here we know from this narration that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is describing the 5 pillars of Islam, right? Is Islam just those 5 pillars? The do's and the don'ts of our religion are held up by the pillars, right? So this is described by scholars as a description or a summary of what it means to learn the Sharia, right? The law, the divine law of God, as it relates to our individual worship. So this is, what's summarized here is like the subjects of fiqh al-ibadat, right? The jurisprudence of our acts of worship. But it includes mu'amalat, it includes things like marriage, it includes things like transactions and economic issues and all sorts of things. But the summary, when the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is being asked to describe Islam, right, he's giving us the pillars of Islam, which represent the do's and don'ts. All of these are actions to witness, to bear witness, to testify openly to the Shahada, to pray, to fast, to give zakah, and to make pilgrimage. These are actions of the outward, and we have to know how to do them, right? It's not, we need to know the basics of wudu and prayer, and these are our ritual acts. And then it extends again beyond that. It represents the ocean of the knowledge of the Sharia that deals with the do's and don'ts and the divine law, right? Now, there are aspects of the divine law that are not fard ayn for me, because maybe I am not specifically involved in those things. So in my personal life, for example, I am not a physician. I don't necessarily need to study the bioethics that a physician needs to know, Islamic bioethics that a Muslim physician needs to know when they are trying to treat people. That's a specified knowledge. Maybe I am a stay-at-home mom, or maybe I am an author, or maybe I am a business person. I still would have to know the legal do's and don'ts of how to run a business. And these are covered under a general category called mu'amalat, or interpersonal relations. And that's how, when people study the do's and don'ts under the wellspring, I want to say, of the Sharia, it's actually not a wellspring. It's more like it's an ocean of knowledge. That's how I like to describe it. People will get their degrees and their masters and their PhDs, and they'll spend 30, 40, 50 years studying the Sharia, and it has so much that a person can study and learn. But the basics, what am I responsible for from these do's and don'ts, is at the very minimal level is the fard ain of my ibadat. That's where I would start. That's where I would start. And then it would continue from there according to what I needed. But the starting point would be the fard ain of the ibadat. And that is why a part of this rejuvenation halaqa is to go back to the basics of studying a madhab. And the one we will actually leave the Hanafi fiqh part to the end of the halaqah, or the fiqh part, I should say, to the end of the halaqah. Um, and that's one of the reasons is to 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 review, right? All of us, I think, are people who make wudu and pray and fast and do all of these things. But our intention is we want to review, we want to renew our commitment and our knowledge in that field and rejuvenate ourselves. Now, the man says to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, "You have spoken truthfully." The companion said, "We were surprised that he asked him and said he was truthful." He said, "Tell me about faith, Iman." The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, "Faith is to believe in Allah, His angels, His books, His messengers, the last day, and to believe in providence, it's good, divine providence, it's good and it's evil." So here again, subhanAllah, the man tells the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, "You have spoken the truth." And again, the companions are surprised that that a person is coming to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and telling him that after he's asked a question. And so they're surprised by it. Now, on this level, we are planning to also cover a very basic introduction to Aqidah. If you look at the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ in this question, what is Iman? The Prophet gives ﷺ the basic pillars, but each pillar has a lot of knowledge behind it. And if you think about, for example, to believe in Allah, well, who is Allah? What are His 99 names? Who are the angels? What do they do? Who are the prophets? The scriptures, right? What is the tafsir of the Quran? Iman is an ocean of knowledge. The subjects related to Iman is another ocean of knowledge. And again, for us in the modern era, the way that you can really conceptualize it is the libraries, right? The Muslim libraries in the East. If you look at just the books that deal with the subjects of Aqidah, they fill rooms. You can again get your bachelor's, master's, PhD and study Aqidah for 30 plus years. We have scholars who are like that. And we will be covering a text, a very basic introductory text, Aqidatul Najat, and we're covering that text by the commentary of it by Dr. Umar Farouk Abdullah, which can also be found online. But we are going to go through it. It's the actual author is Sheikh Muhammad ibn Ja'far al-Kattani al-Hassani al-Fasi. And it's literally, I'm going to show you guys. This is the entirety of the poem. It's right here. It's one page. And he wrote it. He says at the very end of the poem that it's written for busy people, men and women who are busy, even children who are trying to learn their aqidah for the first time. And so going again back to the basics, understanding our deen at that level. And even though this is one page, Dr. Umar's commentary, Dr. Umar Farouk Abdullah, and we are going to be going through his commentary, inshallah, is at least 15 different lectures that are over 1 hour. I think our class will be more like the Cliff Notes version of going through his commentary. And Dr. Umar Farouk Abdullah is a Muslim theologian of our times in his own right. It is something that he has studied, and he has ijazat. I can't speak enough about his credentials, and we're honored to, inshallah, go through that together. Now we continue, and then the man asked the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, "Tell me about Ihsan." And the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he says, "Ihsan is to worship Allah as though you see Him, and even though you don't see Him, knowing that He sees you." Okay, and this, I, for so much of my life, thought this was just a concept. You know, I thought it was a sentence that means a high level of worship. Um, I didn't realize that the Prophet Muhammad SAW was indicating another ocean of knowledge. And ihsan really is another ocean of knowledge. It is, that was not just a statement. You know, just like the pillars of Islam are symbolic of the ocean of knowledge which is the Sharia, and the pillars of Iman are the symbols of the ocean of knowledge, which is our aqidah, you know, our belief system. Then ihsan, this sentence, this single sentence summarizes a reality that belongs to another ocean of knowledge, and it has its own scholars. It has who are qualified all through Islamic history. It has its own texts, and again, there are libraries that are full of um, the the scholarship, and you know, that has been written on that in this field. One of the things I want to really emphasize is, because we're going back to the basics, um, and that's what the goal is. I noticed in particular that, alhamdulillah, as Muslims, there's a lot that has been said about individual spiritual practice as it relates to ourselves and our Creator. How do we remember God throughout the day, right? For example, the spiritual practice of dhikr. How do we have khushu' in our prayer? How do we uh, be alone with God and interpret even the events of our lives through a lens which appreciates who Allah is? Um, Now, that's a category that I think we have done a lot of good work on as a global community, and especially in the English language. But an area that I don't actually see enough, maybe emphasis, is that because our deen is comprehensive, um, and because ihsan then shows up not just when we're with God, right? And worship shows up not just when we are in prayer. Uh, the manifestation of ihsan when we are dealing with each other, that's what I want to focus on. So, as an example, in this, you know, the reality that we live on social media, Facebook, Twitter, other platforms I don't personally use right now, but they are there, like Instagram and whatnot. There's a different culture that's being developed through this technology. And we are forgetting sometimes just really basic aspects of how do we treat each other. This falls within the category, I mean, there's an overlap between ihsan and Islam or Sharia, because there are things that are clearly haram, right? There are aspects of how we deal with one another that are part of the do's and don'ts. There are no-nos. Um, we don't harm one another. But at the same time, there's ways of actually beautifying our practice with one another in terms of how we deal with each other. And this is a reflection of, um, you know, a spiritual reality. Again, that how do I deal with God's creation? How do I deal with a human being as a creation of God? How do I honor them as someone whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created with innate dignity when I disagree, when I see something bad from them, when I've been harmed from them? And so this is a practical aspect of ihsan, and it's, you know, it falls within, sometimes people translate the word ihsan in different ways. There's books, it's called Tazkiyatun Nafs, right? The purification of the soul. And they'll talk about some of these aspects as it relates to how we deal with one another. Tasawwuf is another word that's associated with this idea of purifying ourselves. But at a very basic level, I wanted us to go back to some of the basics of how do we have beautiful relationships with one another, and that are governed by that God consciousness, really, at that higher level of God consciousness, which is to worship Allah as though we see Him. in conflict, right? In tribulation, especially with other human beings. How do I deal with this? How do I try to deal with this from a place of seeking ihsan in that? And so the book that we're going to look at is one that my husband has actually covered at the Majlis before. Again, this halaqah will be different in that after today's class, we will not be live streaming this class on YouTube. We will have a different address and a different password so that ladies only are able to attend, and we can actually open the floor for discussion. It will not be recorded. So if you missed the class, it's okay. You have the book at least. We will try to keep a WhatsApp of everyone who's attending the class. And it really is meant to be more of a virtual study circle than me talking the whole time. All of us, inshallah, are supposed to do some of the reading every week. But the book that we're going to be doing is The Etiquettes of Companionship. And this is by Imam Sha'rani. He has a section in here that's really, really important. I feel like not enough, I actually feel like everyone needs to read it. I feel this is the very, very basic rights of my Muslim brother and sister that I should have learned in this detailed manner when I was very, very young. And we do, alhamdulillah, we learned a lot of it when we were young. We learned basic principles, large principles. But then in the application is where we see a lot of the lack of understanding. And we see that especially on social media. Like it is so blatantly clear that, very simple things like, what does it mean to have a good opinion of my brother or sister, right? When they make a mistake or whatnot, like how do I have a good opinion? What are the etiquettes if people disagree with each other on a matter? These are things that are, maybe they're taught, maybe they're reviewed, but we don't do it. And that's why I think we need the reviews and so badly, is just to bring us back, and that we don't, we have different teachers, we have a different paradigm. When we're trying to correct wrongs as a community or as a society, we have a spiritual foundation for how we do that. Um, our scholars are our teachers. It's not what everyone else is doing. So you have call out culture, you have cancel culture. And I understand I empathize when young people fall into that, because I understand when trust has been betrayed so many times where that comes from. But again, the morals and values of the greater society, and especially their mistakes, they are not our teachers. We have our own teachers for how we deal with our shortcomings as a community, our mistakes, our corrections. And when we're really making huge errors in that regard, we need to go back to the basics, like really go back to the basics. So many articles would not be written and posted online if we went back to the basics. So many online controversies would have been settled. There would have been apologies for things. People would apologize for certain kinds of mistakes. I mean, this idea of go back to the core basics, and what does it mean to express an apology? What does it mean to receive an apology? Like these are, you know, there are etiquettes to this. And subhanAllah, I remember reading parts of this book and I'm like, I never learned that. I was actually taught the opposite in the name of Islam. In the name of religion, I was taught the opposite etiquette, which is the no-no, which is the prohibited thing, and so learning those nuances, understanding them, these are basics that we all need. Many scholars have said we are more in need of beautiful character than we are in need of uh, lots of knowledge. We are more in need of good character than we are in lots of knowledge. And makarim al-akhlaq, this idea of the basic good qualities of good character towards human beings, this is something actually that is, scholars have described that people who, for example, they live on this earth and the knowledge of Islam never arrived to them, right? They never learned about the deen of Islam. Nobody ever came and told them about the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ or the deen. What will they be held accountable for on the day of judgment as far as belief goes? And some of the scholars, they said that that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put in the fitrah of the human being the knowledge that they were created by a creator. So they would be held accountable for their belief in their creator. Again, this is that someone who has no I don't know, like access to anything, and they're living under a rock, what would they be responsible for? What are they mukallaf for? And they wouldn't be mukallaf for the details of the Sharia, but it says that they have an innate understanding of God created me. There is an afterlife. I am going back to him. This is also placed within the fitrah. And makarim al-akhlaq, this idea of the universal principles of how to, do good and be good towards others, whether it's human beings or, other creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and how to not be harmful, intentionally harmful. That is also something that is placed within the fitrah of the human being. And so this is part of going back to the basics, even in terms of ihsan, but it's a little bit more nuanced. It's a little bit, there's a lot more discussion about the ways that we make mistakes, very basic mistakes on a spiritual level in terms of how we deal with one another. And so we will only go through the introduction, the first chapter and the second chapter, which is the rights of companionship. And after that, we'll transition to a different text. Both of these texts can be bought online. This can be bought on Amazon. I think it's about $12, maybe $13. The author is Imam Sha'rani. The book is Etiquette of Companionship. I will send the PDF for the Aqidatun Najat poem to everyone who provides their information for the next class. We're going to make a WhatsApp. What do I mean by provide the information? I mean, send me an email with your WhatsApp number and phone number, and you can send that to M Permal. So that's M is the first letter of my first name. Permal is my last name at themajlis.us. And simply say, I would like to be added to the ladies Halaqa study circle WhatsApp, and then leave the phone number. And all of these things will be uploaded there. Again, after today, all of the classes will not be online in terms of live on YouTube. They will only be accessible through the new Zoom code and password, which we will share on the WhatsApp group, and which also you can contact the Majlis as an organization directly through our Facebook page and ask for it. Also, if you know any of us personally, you can feel free to text us personally and ask for it, and we will give you both, we'll give you the information for that, inshallah. For Hanafi fiqh, we are going to cover at least the fiqh al-ibadat in mpermal at the majlis.us, US. So that's the end of the address, but the first part you have right, yes. So here is Ascent to Felicity. And this is the Hanafi fiqh text. It also has aqidah in there, but we're not going to be doing the aqidah from this text. You're welcome to read it if you like. And the actual, this is a translation of Maraqi al-Sa'adat, and it's by Abu al-Ikhlas al-Shurumbulali, and he's the author of other famous Hanafi texts like Nur al-Idah. The translation and the notes and the appendices are again by a living American scholar, alhamdulillah, Sheikh Faraz Khan, who teaches at Zaytuna College. So this book is also, you can buy it online. If there is interest, and I do believe there's interest in covering an English text with a female teacher who is trained in the Maliki school or in the Shafi'i school, and I'm also looking for someone like that in the Hanbali school. We're in the process of trying to accommodate, and so if the ideal situation is we'll cover Aqidah, and we'll cover some tazkiyah from the etiquettes of companionship, and then we'll have breakout rooms with other teachers for the other schools. It is good. I should mention here that it is good, even though for myself, I studied at Al-Azhar, the curriculum is where you study one school really well, its methodology, usul al-fiqh, also in that school really well, and then they also did comparative. And they did everything, like comparative fiqh, even tafsir, ayatul ahkam, ahadithul ahkam was all comparative. The ahkam from that is in the discussion and the debate from all four schools, and more than just the four schools. But for personal practice, for fard ain, it's important to at least know one school well, and that's why we are doing it this way. Scholars, great scholars, may know more than one school well. the mufti has to have access, for example, for more than for all for as many schools as they possibly can, actually, for giving ifta. But for the individual person who just wants to know their basics, it's good to know one school, and this has been widely accepted as the best way to grow in fiqh al-ibadat. A lot can be said about this. We don't actually have too much more time. Today was an introduction to the halaqah. And then in 2 weeks, we will have an introduction. We'll cover the introductions from all of these. Now, the good news is you don't have to do any preparation for the aqidah part, because it will be me providing you guys with the summary of the commentary on the poem by Dr. Omar Farouk Abdullah. But for the other two books, again, the encouragement, it's not required, but to really benefit from the study circle is to intend to just read at least one page a day total. Now, it doesn't mean you have to read 14 pages from each book, but it means the combined, you're going to have, and sometimes it'll be even less than that, to be honest, because I want us to go into some level of detail. But at least just for next week, because we're going to be doing introductions, I should say the homework or the encouragement is first get the text, get the books on Amazon if you can. Then the second assignment, I guess, would be for etiquettes of companionship, just to read from the section that says about the author, and through chapter 1. Chapter 1 is 4 pages about the author, and the author's introduction, all of that is like 3 pages. So there's a total of around 7 pages if you read the introduction through chapter 1. Chapter 1 is just like a why, for why this text is something and is so important, and the merits of companionship for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And actually, I wouldn't even say you have to do all of chapter 1. You just have to go to page 3 of chapter 1. So don't start traditions on the merits of loving one another for the sake of Allah. Right? So it's just the beginning of the book until page 3. Should be around 7 pages. And then for Maraqi as-Sa'adat, or Ascent to Felicity, it's going to be from pages 13 through 23, which is also an introduction. A lot of it is blank pages, so in the end it also amounts to about 7 pages. And this is the encouragement. We will cover this as a review, as a study circle in the class, and we will discuss it, inshallah, and we'll hopefully try to benefit from that together. And I think that's about it as far as covering what we are going to be doing. Our goal is to move very slowly, but hopefully with some depth. And inshallah, that it is rejuvenating for us to feel like we're going back to the beginning, and we're going through it in detail, and we're going to ask questions, and we're going to contact scholars that are I'm like the TA, so anytime there's a question, I will ask the great scholars, the teachers that we do have, alhamdulillah, accessible to us. I think that's about it on my part. And so now I would like to open it up for questions. And let me see what we have here in the chat box. So one question is how to register for the ladies only sessions. It's simply by having the new, you don't have to actually like register anywhere, but you can, we're gonna post the new Zoom address, and then getting the Zoom password, requesting the Zoom password for that new address privately. You can also just email me directly at mpermul@themajlis.us. I'm gonna post the whole thing right now into the chat box. We will have, sorry, I think I did that privately. Let me do this publicly. I have to say, it's really nice to have the members of the local community join through Zoom and seeing your names. mashallah, is inspiring for me. I'm excited. And, even if two people come to class, one of the things I'm really taking from this is, subhanAllah, I need this myself. So one person comes, I'm happy. 20 people come, I'm happy. Jazakallah khair, Hanan. And I'm just honored to embark on this journey together. I know that, again, as a mother, we're so busy right now during COVID-19 doing all sorts of things and feeling like, I'm catching this event and that event, but I just need that regular food. I need that regular dose of the main meal. Other parts are like the dessert or whatever, but the main meal, this is the main meal. The basics are the main meal, and being able to go back to this is, alhamdulillah, something I'm excited about for us. Let me also see if we have any questions online through YouTube. Assignments will be posted on in the WhatsApp group regularly, and I'm going to go according to the pace of the attendees. So if people said that was way too much last week, we couldn't do it, or it's overwhelming, and also to look back at the halaqah, were we able to even cover the discussion on the amount that everyone read, or not? So it is, again, the address is mpermal@themajlis.us. So make sure to put the. Okay. This, yes, it's not mpermal@majlis. It's mpermal@themajlis.us. The question about the books again. So I'm gonna go through that very quickly. First is this poem, and we are going to do the commentary on the poem. And there's a lot of commentary. It's a one-page poem. I'm going to provide the PDF to the WhatsApp group that we create for this study circle. So everyone will have it and they can look at it and read it. It's a poem. So even if you read it in Arabic and you read it in English, it needs to be decoded with the commentary. And it is called in Arabic, Aqidatun Najat, the Creed of Salvation. And the author is Sheikh Muhammad ibn Ja'far al-Kattani al-Hassani al-Fasi. And we'll do an introduction on him, inshallah, next class. The second book here is Ascent to Felicity. This is a book that you can order on Amazon. You can also probably get it from the Zaytuna bookstore. And I think it's about $20 on Amazon. This is it's good to have the books that you are studying in fiqh, because you're going to put your notes in it. You can write directly into it. You don't necessarily need to have a separate notebook. You put your comments in the margins. It's something you can always go back to. And it's special like that. It becomes more yours. And so this is Ascent to Felicity. The translation, notes, and appendices is by Sheikh Faraz Khan, a Zaytuna College professor. And, the fact that we have, alhamdulillah, people alive today who are writing the translations and the commentaries on classical texts in fiqh is a great blessing, alhamdulillah. And then the third one is Etiquettes of Companionship. The author is Imam Sha'rani. I think you can get this on Amazon for $13. I think it's 13. Might be a little bit more, might be like 16, not sure. But we will be with these books for a while, so it's worth it to buy it if possible. And it's good to support Islamic scholarship. It's good to pay for these books. You know what I mean? Because every time you buy, you are supporting the production of Islamic knowledge in our times, the print production of Islamic knowledge in our times. The class itself is free, alhamdulillah, or the study circle is free to attend. So that part nobody has to worry about. So, but please do buy the books. It benefits the scholars and the people behind it. Let me see if there are any other questions. The class will go slowly, like I mentioned before, inshallah. And I hope that it is for some of us, all of it will be review. For others, there will be parts that are new. And I really, for myself, I noticed that it's in these basics. it's in these essentials that we are refueled, that we are rejuvenated in a way that is lasting beyond the moment. Because it's not just, when you go back to the basics, I'm not feeding you a fish, I'm teaching you how to fish. And so they become staples that you have, and a compass that you keep, that you can go back to. And again, alhamdulillah, that we're able to cover this material, or this, and inshallah, have the Q&A, try to understand it together. And we have access to American Muslim scholars who are there to be able to answer questions for us. If and a lot of times I know I'm going to be saying I don't know, I'm going to have to ask about that. Alhamdulillah, so many have agreed to being that source of extra added support for this study circle. Inshallah, we'll try to provide information. If you know sisters who would be interested in this class, please do contact them about it. I know that there are more structured classes available at Ar-Rahma Foundation that are like every class is one subject. So you would take fiqh as a subject, or you would take aqidah as a subject. But here we're doing a study circle that covers all three core basics. And I didn't complete the narration of Hadith Jibril, but afterwards, the man who's talking to the Prophet Muhammad SAW asked the Prophet Muhammad SAW about the signs of the Day of Judgment. And after that, when the man leaves, and the Prophet SAW gives him the answers, after the man leaves, the companions, they ask the Prophet Muhammad SAW who he was. And the Prophet Muhammad SAW says, that was Jibril. He came to teach you your religion. He came to teach you your religion. So growing in religion is not just the Sharia, and it's not just Aqidah, and it's not just Tazkiyah, but it's all three, right? All three oceans of knowledge are needed. And when we are imbalanced, we find in ourselves something is really missing. We're like, I'm doing all of this, I'm involved in whatever I'm involved in, I'm doing, and I still feel like something's missing. Well, it's because you're not taking from all three oceans. There's something that we've missed out on in this area or that area. And so going back to the beginning basics is, inshallah, something I hope will help to fill that void and will rejuvenate us. And the reminders will be important. I really hope and pray, inshallah, for all of us. And I hope that it's a very meaningful experience as sisters, and that we develop even virtual sisterhood through it. Once I think we go offline, I can imagine we'll share our cameras and we'll see each other's faces, and we'll get to know each other a little bit better, inshallah. You don't have to do that, but it would be encouraged. That our deen, growing in our deen, is a beautiful, inshallah, journey. And I hope that it is something that benefits myself, benefits you, benefits all of us in a way that's meaningful. I think that was all I had to cover for today. I think if there's no more questions, alhamdulillah, this is the second time today. My goal has always been to try to finish before Maghrib comes in. And it's funny because when we're on site at the Majlis, classes always go over. And online, I'm finding, alhamdulillah, that we're able to actually contain it within its time. So that's new for me, alhamdulillah. Let me just check one more thing. Okay, so yeah, if people would like to let their friends know about this, there's the flyer. Again, keep in mind the address is going to change, the Zoom address and the password for the next class. And also just wanted to let you all know that we will be restarting our monthly ladies teas again. And this is an all ladies Zoom gathering. This time, Saturday of next week, not this coming Saturday, but the Saturday after, we're actually honored to have Sheikha Zainab Al-Ansari, who will be talking to us about solace and sisterhood. And a lot of it will look at how, basic rights of sisterhood in the times that we're living in the context that we're living in, but also especially in terms of how people who are the non-Black members of the Muslim community can truly be supportive sisters for our Black American sisters. And this was inspired by looking at all the work that, alhamdulillah, the community started to do as it relates to police brutality and the struggle for Black lives and liberation in this country, the Muslim history in that, and how to bridge sometimes the divide that we have in understanding. And beyond that, in this society, we have language around how to be an ally, right, for certain causes. And she will speak, inshallah, both to that, but how to be beyond an ally, how to be a sister, how to really, again, going back to our own spiritual tradition, how do we have solidarity, support, and solace, and how do we provide that for our Black Muslim sisters? And I haven't, I think it's important for anyone in the Muslim community who is not Black to take time to just listen to the Black Muslim community. And our job is just to hear from them basically what is wanted from us, what is expected from us, how can we do better, how can we really rise to the occasion as sisters, as brothers and sisters in Islam, in providing the support that people are feeling is needed and is missing. And so, we're very fortunate to have someone like Sheikha Zainab Ansari to come and give us this knowledge and to, open up these discussions. And some of them might be a little bit difficult, or, we haven't maybe had these discussions as much as we've needed to, but maybe this is a moment to really change and to change for the better and to try to meet the challenges. From the spiritual tradition, from the perspective of our own faith tradition. So we're not we're not just talking about political advocacy, which is important, but like sisterhood, right? For our and support. So hopefully we guys, please do let people know about that, and please do come. I think that's it for today. If there are one last call for questions. Wa iyakum, and thank you guys for joining. Alhamdulillah, I'm so happy to be in your presence and, in your virtual presence doing this. I always say these classes benefit me more than you guys because I get to do the preparation. I need it more than you do, I'm sure. So this is an opportunity that you're giving me that, to grow with you, inshallah. And I'm, alhamdulillah, really excited about it. So we'll end, inshallah, with dua. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. اللهم وفقنا لما تحبه وترضى واجعلنا من عبيدك السعداء وأمتنا على كلمة الهدى علمنا ما ينفعنا ووفقنا للعمل بما علمتنا به واجعل ما نحن فيه خالصا مخلصا لوجهك الكريم آمين يا رب العالمين. اللهم اجعل تجمعنا هذا تجمعا مرحوما وتفرقنا بعده تفرقا معصوما لا شقيا منا ولا محروما وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. In the name of God, the most compassionate, the most merciful, peace and blessings be upon our Master Muhammad, his noble family, companions, and followers until the end of time. O God, give us success to attain what you love and are pleased with. Make us among your felicitous servants. Allow us to die on the statement of guidance. Teach us what will benefit us and give us success to act upon what you taught us. Make that in which we are engaged pure and devoted to your noble face. Ameen, O Lord of the worlds. O God, make this gathering of ours a gathering enveloped in mercy, and our parting thereafter a parting of our sins purged and forgiven, not one of us wretched or deprived, and peace and blessings be upon our Master Muhammad and upon his noble family, followers, and companions. Ameen. Thank you everyone for joining us. Barakallahu fikum. Assalamu alaikum.